A legal blow for former President Joe Biden. Yesterday, a federal appeals court rejected Biden's request to block the release of audio recordings and transcripts of interviews he had done in 2017 with his ghostwriter. The recordings were used in special counsel Robert Hur's investigation. As you will remember, Hur investigated Biden's handling of classified documents during his time as senator and vice president. In a 2-to-1 ruling, the panel of 3 federal judges held that there is, quote, substantial public interest in the material. The Federal Appeals Court has put a stay on its decision until August 3rd in order to give the former president time for another appeal to the full Court of Appeals or seek relief in the United States Supreme Court. Former federal prosecutor Joe Moreno joins me. Nice to see you. 2-to-1 decision. It wasn't 3-0, so likely the president will seek a full court hearing to sort of stretch this out, or at least if I were his lawyer, I'd stretch it out from now to eternity.
Why not? I'm gladdened by the fact that even though it was just 2-to-1, it was a common sense decision from a court in D.C., which is actually pretty unusual these days. And it says, look, you can't have it both ways. You can't have a special counsel that investigates matters and has to produce a report like the one they were insistent on releasing about Donald Trump. But then when it comes to Biden himself and the report about him, which relied on these transcripts, you can't say, well, those are off limits now. So it's one or the other. And the court rightfully said, look, Robert Hur relied on these transcripts in making his decision to charge or not charge President Biden, and therefore they're fair game.
I also think there's another sort of deeper part of this, is that the ghostwriter recorded 2016 and 2017. That's when the conversation was. And there's a huge question as to his state of mind because he was kept away from the public. I mean, nobody ever saw President Biden. He was invisible to the press. And I'd like to know what his state of mind was back to 2016 and 2017, because we learned a lot about it 4 years later. A lot can happen in 4 years, or much later, in 2024 in that debate. So I would like to hear him speaking in 2016, 2017, and match it up to the transcripts, and see whether or not that he was as he was sort of politely described as diminished faculties, advancing age by her, which could have been a couple years later, but. I think we have a right to know.
I'm sure it won't be good for Biden, because there's a reason he's been trying so hard to keep it under wraps. But it's not just about our right to know as voters, which is legitimate. It's also the fact that, remember, Hur opted not to bring charges largely because he felt Biden was a forgetful old man. So you can't say that I'm relying on these transcripts, but then you can't see them.
Yeah, no, I understand. I think that's a very good point. But, he ran after that for President of the United States, making decisions about our military. And his staff kept him, I think, probably hidden from us as well. And the family did. If he was of sound mind, fine. We'll see that in the transcripts. If he wasn't, that it is disturbing at the very minimum.
I don't think that there's much of a legacy to Joe Biden to begin with, and it keeps getting worse and worse. I think this will just be another kind of just slap in the face for him, like, man, he never probably should have been president in the first place. And the fact that they were going to try to get him another 4 years, that's pretty scary.
Yeah. All right, so this would probably go to the full Court of Appeals. They'll drag it out. And then whatever they decide, and the loser will take it then. We'll ask the Supreme Court to hear it. And the Supreme Court probably decided sometime between now and next June 30th.
Yeah, the Supreme Court they'll ultimately release these. There's not a great argument to keep them private. It's interesting because the dissenting judge here, the one dissenter who is a Biden appointee, Judge Pan, she basically made her dissent on procedural grounds. Like, basically, I'm going to let him keep litigating, even though I know he's probably going to lose in the long run. But there's a very telling excerpt from her dissent. She says, the investigation took place 2 years ago, and the Justice Department does not identify a surge of renewed interest in Hur's report. Think about that.
What does that have to do with anything?
Well, that's a judge sitting here in D.C. saying, you know what, process is one thing, but I personally don't think there's a surge of interest by the public to see that. I mean,
we're still writing books about presidents who've been dead for 50 years.
This is the kind of activism that I think drives us more conservative people crazy, because that's a judge taking it upon herself to decide, regardless of what the law says, what she thinks the public is interested in seeing. That's a scary thought.
I think, I believe in transparency. We got to get it out. We got to see it, and whatever the cards show, the cards show. Joe Moreno, thank you.
Thanks, Greta.